I, 31M, got a call from my bank about a refinancing application I never made. Turns out my brother, 33M, forged documents making himself co-owner of my house. The FBI raid found so much worse. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am, still processing what happened over the past few weeks. My name is Michael, I'm 31, and I recently discovered that my older brother James, 33, attempted to forge documents claiming he owned half of my house. This is the story of how I caught him and what happened next. For context, James and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child, charismatic, athletic, the one who could charm his way out of any situation. I was the quiet one who focused on academics and eventually landed a good job as a software engineer. Our parents passed away 5 years ago in a car accident, leaving us a modest inheritance that we split equally. I used my portion, combined with my savings, to buy a house in suburban Colorado. James burned through his inheritance within 18 months on failed business ventures and what he called investments, but were really gambling debts. The house I bought isn't anything spectacular, a 3-bedroom colonial in a decent neighborhood, but it's mine. I'd worked hard for it, saved every penny, and made extra mortgage payments whenever I could. By last year, I'd paid off about 60% of it. James, meanwhile, had been couch-surfing between friends' places and occasionally staying with our Aunt Patricia in Denver. Everything started 3 weeks ago when I received a call from my mortgage company. The representative, a woman named Sharon, sounded confused. "Mr. Thompson, I'm calling about your recent refinancing application. We noticed some discrepancies in the ownership documents you submitted." I felt my stomach drop. "I'm sorry, what refinancing application? I haven't applied for any refinancing." There was a pause. "Sir, we received an application 2 weeks ago with documentation showing joint ownership between you and James Thompson. The application is requesting a cash-out refinance for $180,000. My hands started shaking. "I need you to freeze everything immediately. I never submitted any application, and my brother absolutely does not own any part of my house. This is fraud." Sharon's tone shifted to concern. "Mr. Thompson, I'm transferring you to our fraud department right away. Please stay on the line." The next hour was a blur of conversations with various departments. The fraud investigator, Daniel, walked me through what they'd received, a deed transfer document supposedly signed by me 3 months ago, granting James 50% ownership of my property, along with a refinancing application that would have pulled out most of my equity in cash. The documents included what appeared to be my signature and a notary seal from someone named Barbara Mitchell. "Can you send me copies of these documents?" I asked, my mind racing. "I'll email them to you within the hour, Mr. Thompson. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you contact law enforcement and check your credit reports immediately." After hanging up, I sat in my home office, staring at my computer screen. My own brother had tried to steal my house. When the documents arrived, I examined them carefully. The signature looked convincing at first glance, but I noticed subtle differences. The way the M in Michael curved, the angle of the crosses on the T's. I'd spent years analyzing code and patterns, and these small inconsistencies jumped out at me. More importantly, the supposed date of signing was March 15th, a day I'd been in Seattle for a work conference. I had plane tickets, hotel receipts, and even presented at a panel that day, all documented. I immediately called the police and filed a report. The officer who took my statement, Officer Rodriguez, seemed to take it seriously once I showed him the evidence. "This is actually a federal crime, Mr. Thompson. Real estate fraud across state lines, identity theft, forgery. Your brother's looking at serious charges if he's behind this." "He is," I said firmly. "No one else would have access to enough of my information to attempt this." The next step was tracking down this Barbara Mitchell, the supposed notary. It took some digging, but I found her, or rather, I found that she didn't exist. The notary license number on the document belonged to a real notary named Barbara Morrison, who had reported her stamp stolen 6 months ago. When I called her, she confirmed she'd never notarized any documents for anyone named Thompson. I also discovered that the refinancing application had been submitted online, and the IP address, which the mortgage company's fraud department provided to law enforcement, traced back to a coffee shop about 2 miles from where James had been staying with one of his friends, Kevin. The detective assigned to my case, Detective Jennifer Park, was thorough and methodical. She interviewed me twice, gathered all my documentation, and assured me they were taking this seriously. "Mr. Thompson, cases like this often involve more than just one crime. We're going to need to check if your brother has done this to anyone else." 2 days later, Detective Park called with an update. They'd brought James in for questioning. "He denied everything at first," she said. "But when we showed him the evidence, including security footage from the coffee shop showing him on his laptop at the exact time the application was submitted, he asked for a lawyer." The security footage was damning. The coffee shop had high-definition cameras, and there was James, clear as day, hunched over his laptop at exactly 2:47 p.m. on the day the fraudulent refinancing application was submitted. He'd even used their Wi-Fi, which they were able to confirm through their system logs. But the investigation didn't stop there. Detective Park had contacted the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division because the case involved multiple federal crimes. The FBI agent assigned to the case, Special Agent Robert Chun, called me the following week. "Mr. Thompson, we've been investigating your brother's activities, and we've found evidence of a broader pattern. This wasn't his first attempt at document forgery. We've identified at least 3 other victims, including a former business partner and an ex-girlfriend. We're preparing to execute a search warrant on his current residence and seize all electronic devices." The anger I'd felt initially was morphing into something else, a cold, determined fury mixed with profound disappointment. James hadn't just betrayed me, he'd been running these schemes on multiple people. The brother I'd grown up with, who I'd shared Christmas mornings with, who'd taught me to ride a bike, had become someone I didn't recognize. I spent the next few days gathering every piece of documentation I could find. Every text message from James over the past year, including several where he'd asked to borrow money and I'd refused. Every email, every piece of mail that had my personal information on it that he might have had access to during his brief stays at my house. I created a comprehensive timeline and document package for the investigators. One particularly damning piece of evidence was a text exchange from 2 months ago. "James, you could at least help me out. That house should be half mine anyway. Me, James, we split Mom and Dad's inheritance equally. What I did with my portion was my choice, just like what you did with yours was your choice. James, easy for you to say from your nice house while I'm sleeping on couches. Me, I offered to help you find a job. You refused. James, I don't need your help finding a job. I need capital for my business ideas. Me, I'm not giving you money to gamble with again. James, you'll regret not helping me." At the time, I dismissed it as another one of his empty threats. Now it read like a confession of intent. Update 1. The Raid. It's been a week since my original post, and things have escalated dramatically. Last Tuesday morning, FBI agents executed search warrants at 3 locations. The apartment where James had been staying with his friend Kevin, a storage unit he'd been renting, and surprisingly, our cousin Thomas's house in Wyoming, where James had apparently been storing some documents and computer equipment. Agent Chun called me that afternoon. "Mr. Thompson, we've seized multiple computers, external hard drives, and boxes of documents. Our digital forensics team is going through everything now, but preliminary findings are extensive. Your brother had templates for various legal documents, tutorials on document forgery, and what appears to be a list of potential targets with personal information. I was on the list, marked as Phase 2, Primary Target, $180,000 potential. There were 12 other names on that list. 12 other people James was planning to defraud. Some were family members, including our Aunt Patricia, who'd been letting him stay with her periodically. Others were former friends and business associates. Each entry included estimated potential amounts and notes about their vulnerabilities, going through divorce, elderly, confused easily, travels frequently for work. Kevin, James's friend, had been cooperative with authorities. He claimed he had no knowledge of James's activities and had already been planning to ask him to leave because James hadn't paid his agreed-upon rent in 2 months. Kevin provided investigators with security camera footage from his apartment that showed James working on documents late at night, and even captured him practicing my signature on multiple sheets of paper. The storage unit was a goldmine of evidence. James had kept copies of everything: forged documents he'd used in previous schemes, real documents he'd stolen from victims, even a journal where he detailed his plans and rationalized his actions. One entry from 6 weeks ago read, "Michael owes me. He got lucky with his job while my businesses failed because the market was against me. The house should be half mine anyway. I'm just taking what's rightfully mine." Agent Chen informed me that they'd also found evidence of James opening credit cards in other people's names, including our deceased parents. He'd somehow managed to open a credit card in our father's name 8 months after he'd passed away and had run up $15,000 in charges. The moral boundaries James had crossed were staggering. The FBI also discovered that James had been working with someone else, a woman named Linda Patterson who worked at a title company and had been providing him with blank documents and inside information about property transfers. She was arrested the same day as the raids. James was formally arrested last Thursday on federal charges including identity theft, wire fraud, mail fraud, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. His bail was set at $500,000, which he obviously couldn't post. According to Agent Chen, when they arrested him, James tried to claim I'd given him permission to add his name to the house deed and that this was all a misunderstanding between brothers. He actually seemed to believe his own lie, Agent Chen told me. Even when we showed him the forged documents, he insisted you'd agreed to it verbally and he was just formalizing the arrangement. The psychological evaluation ordered by his court-appointed attorney suggested James might have narcissistic personality disorder with antisocial features. The evaluator noted his persistent externalization of blame and grandiose sense of entitlement. It was validating to see a professional confirm what I'd suspected for years, that James's problems went deeper than just poor judgment or bad luck. My Aunt Patricia called me sobbing after learning she was on James's target list. He was planning to steal from me too? After everything I did for him. She'd let him stay with her rent-free for 3 months, had cooked him meals, and even lent him $2,000 that he'd never paid back. The other victims have been notified, and several have come forward with their own stories of James's attempts to manipulate them. One, a former business partner named Christopher, revealed that James had tried to forge his signature on a business loan application 2 years ago, but Christopher had caught it before any damage was done. He'd chosen not to press charges at the time because James had begged him and promised to get help. "I feel guilty now," Christopher told me when we spoke. "If I'd reported it then, maybe he wouldn't have escalated to this." Update 2. The investigation deepens. It's been 3 weeks now since the raids, and the investigation has uncovered even more than anyone anticipated. The FBI's forensic accountants have traced James's activities back 5 years, finding a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that started with simple theft from family members and evolved into sophisticated forgery schemes. They found evidence that James had been selling how to forge documents tutorials on dark web forums under the username DocMaster 2018. He'd made approximately $30,000 from these sales over the past 2 years. The tutorials included step-by-step instructions on forging signatures, creating fake notary seals, and manipulating PDF documents to appear legitimate. The FBI believes at least 40 people purchased these tutorials, potentially creating dozens more victims across the country. The investigation also revealed that James had successfully defrauded 3 elderly victims out of a combined $87,000 through various schemes before attempting to steal my house. One victim, an 78-year-old widow named Margaret, had been convinced to sign over partial ownership of her vacation cabin in Utah. James had posed as a financial advisor and told her it was for tax purposes. She only discovered the fraud when she tried to sell the property and found James listed as a 40% owner. "I've been working closely with the prosecutors, providing any information they need." The Assistant U.S. Attorney, Jennifer Williams, told me this is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases she's seen involving family members. "Your documentation and cooperation have been invaluable, Mr. Thompson. You've helped us build an airtight case." The storage unit continued to provide evidence. Among the items found was a laminating machine, various official-looking stamps and seals, and even blank Social Security cards. James had been running a one-man forgery operation. There was also a laptop with encrypted files that took the FBI's cybercrimes unit 2 weeks to crack. Inside were detailed financial records of his victims, including bank statements he'd obtained through social engineering and phishing emails. One particularly disturbing discovery was a recorded phone call James had made to our Aunt Patricia, pretending to be from her bank's fraud department. He'd convinced her to verify her account numbers and security questions for her protection. He'd recorded the entire conversation, presumably to use the information later. The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced, that it made me wonder how many times he'd done this before. Linda Patterson, his accomplice at the title company, had agreed to cooperate fully in exchange for a reduced sentence. She revealed that James had initially seduced her, presenting himself as a successful real estate investor. They'd been in a relationship for 6 months before he'd convinced her to help with what he called expediting paperwork for his deals. She claimed she didn't realize the documents were forged until the FBI showed her the evidence. She provided investigators with text messages and emails from James that clearly showed his intent to defraud multiple victims. The financial impact on James's victims has been significant. Beyond the monetary losses, several have had their credit destroyed and have spent thousands on legal fees trying to restore their property rights. Margaret, the elderly widow, had to delay her move to an assisted living facility because she couldn't sell her cabin with a clouded title. Another victim, a small business owner named David, nearly lost his commercial property that he'd used as collateral for a business loan because James had filed fraudulent liens against it. "I've joined a support group for fraud victims, which has been helpful in processing the emotional impact of this betrayal. It's one thing to be victimized by a stranger, It's another entirely when it's your own brother. The group leader, a therapist named Dr. Sarah Mitchell, explained that family fraud creates a unique type of trauma because it destroys fundamental trust relationships. You're grieving not just the violation and potential financial loss, she explained, but also the loss of the relationship you thought you had with your brother. Update 3. Legal proceedings. 6 weeks have passed since James's arrest, and the legal machinery is in full motion. I've hired my own attorney, Richard Brennan, to handle the civil side of things while the criminal case proceeds. Richard has filed lawsuits against James for damages, including emotional distress, legal fees, and punitive damages. He's also working on getting restraining orders to prevent James from contacting me or coming near my property. Your brother's actions were not just criminal, they were calculated and predatory, Richard told me. We're going to ensure you're fully compensated for everything you've been through. The criminal case has been moving faster than expected. James's court-appointed attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal early on, but the prosecutors rejected the initial offer. With 13 confirmed victims and losses exceeding $300,000, they're pushing for maximum sentences on all charges. If convicted on all counts, James faces up to 30 years in federal prison. Last week, there was a preliminary hearing where some of the evidence was presented. I attended, sitting in the gallery with several other victims. James looked different, thinner, older somehow. He wore an orange jumpsuit and was shackled at the wrists and ankles. When he saw me, he mouthed, "I'm sorry," but I looked away. His apologies meant nothing now. The prosecutor, Jennifer Williams, methodically presented the evidence. The forged documents, the security footage, the digital evidence from his computers, Linda Patterson's testimony, and the victim impact statements. The judge, Honorable Patricia Chen, seemed particularly disturbed by the evidence that James had targeted elderly victims and family members. "Mr. Thompson," she addressed James directly, "the evidence presented suggests a pattern of deliberate exploitation of those who trusted you most. This court takes such violations very seriously." James's attorney argued that his client had been under financial stress and had made poor decisions, but was remorseful and willing to make restitution. The claim of restitution was almost laughable. James had no assets, no job, and no way to pay back what he'd stolen. During a recess, I spoke with Margaret, the elderly widow James had defrauded. She was a small woman with silver hair and kind eyes that had been dimmed by this experience. "I trusted him," she said quietly. "He seemed so professional, so caring. He even sent me a Christmas card." The Christmas card, it turned out, was part of his strategy to build trust before the fraud. The FBI has also been working with international law enforcement, as they discovered James had been communicating with fraud rings in Eastern Europe, possibly planning to expand his operations or flee the country. His passport had been flagged, and Agent Chen told me they'd intercepted communications suggesting James had been trying to obtain a fake passport under another name. Update 4. The plea and asset recovery. 2 months have now passed since my original discovery of James's fraud, and there's been a major development. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of spending most of his adult life in prison, James has agreed to plead guilty to multiple federal charges. The plea agreement includes a guilty plea to 5 counts of wire fraud, a guilty plea to 3 counts of identity theft, a guilty plea to 2 counts of mail fraud, a guilty plea to 1 count of conspiracy to commit real estate fraud, an agreement to pay full restitution to all victims, an agreement to cooperate fully with ongoing investigations, a recommended sentence of 12 to 15 years in federal prison. While 12 to 15 years is less than the maximum 30 he was facing, the prosecutor explained that this plea deal ensures justice for all victims without the uncertainty and expense of a trial. It also requires James to fully disclose all his criminal activities and assist in investigating any other participants in his schemes. The best news came from Richard, my attorney. Through aggressive legal action, we've managed to freeze several assets James had hidden. It turns out he hadn't burned through all the money he'd stolen. He'd been stashing it in various places. We found $43,000 in a cryptocurrency wallet he thought was untraceable, at $28,000 in a bank account under a false business name, $15,000 in cash hidden in the storage unit, a 2019 BMW he'd purchased with stolen funds but registered under Linda Patterson's name, various electronics and jewelry worth approximately $20,000. The court has ordered all these assets liquidated and distributed to victims proportionally based on their losses. While it won't make everyone whole, it's something. Margaret will get enough to clear the title on her cabin and cover her legal fees. I'll receive approximately $32,000, which will cover my legal expenses and the counseling I've been attending. More importantly, the court has issued a permanent restraining order preventing James from contacting me, coming within 500 feet of my property, or attempting any communication except through attorneys. He's also been ordered to surrender any documents, digital or physical, containing my personal information. During the plea hearing, James was required to allocute, to admit in detail what he'd done. Standing before the judge, he described his crimes in a monotone voice. I forged my brother Michael's signature on a deed transfer document. I used a stolen notary seal to make it appear legitimate. I submitted a fraudulent refinancing application attempting to steal $180,000 in equity from his home. I created fake documents claiming to be a financial advisor to defraud Margaret Wilson of partial ownership of her property. I opened credit cards in my deceased parents' names. The list went on for 20 minutes. Each admission was another nail in the coffin of any relationship we might have salvaged. Our cousin Thomas was there, along with our Aunt Patricia. I saw Patricia crying quietly as James admitted to planning to defraud her. After the hearing, James's attorney approached me. Your brother wants you to know he's genuinely sorry. He's been attending therapy in detention and realizes the harm he's caused. Tell him, I said slowly, that his apologies mean nothing. He made calculated decisions to destroy lives for his own gain. He can be as sorry as he wants from his federal cell. The attorney nodded and walked away. I felt no satisfaction in my response, just a hollow finality. Final update, resolution and reflection. It's been 2 weeks since the plea hearing, and I'm finally able to close this chapter. James was officially sentenced to 14 years in federal prison with the possibility of reduction to 12 for good behavior. He'll be serving his time at a federal correctional institution in another state, far from Colorado. He's also been ordered to attend mandatory therapy for his personality disorders and participate in a financial crimes rehabilitation program. The Victim Restitution Fund has been established and distributions have begun. Everyone will receive at least partial compensation within the next 60 days. The FBI is using James's tutorials and methods to help train investigators in identifying similar frauds. In a strange way, his detailed documentation of his crimes is helping prevent future victims. Linda Patterson received 18 months in prison and 3 years of supervised probation. She's also been permanently barred from working in the real estate or financial sectors. Her cooperation was instrumental in understanding the full scope of James's operations. I've continued with therapy, working through the complex emotions of being betrayed by family. Dr. Sarah Mitchell has helped me understand that James's actions weren't really about me. They were about his own distorted worldview where he was entitled to whatever he wanted, regardless of who he hurt. Narcissistic criminals often target family first, she explained, because they see family as extensions of themselves, not as separate people with their own rights and boundaries. The house feels different now. Every room carries a shadow of what almost happened. I've installed a comprehensive security system and monitoring service. I check my credit reports monthly. I've also placed fraud alerts on all my accounts and frozen my credit. These might seem like extreme measures, but they help me sleep at night. Our extended family has been fractured by this. Some relatives think I should have handled it within the family and not involved law enforcement. Aunt Patricia, surprisingly, has been my strongest supporter. You did what you had to do, she told me last week. James made his choices. You just held him accountable. I've received messages from other fraud victims thanking me for pursuing this case. Christopher, the former business partner who didn't press charges 2 years ago, said my actions gave him closure. I always blamed myself for not stopping him then. Seeing him finally face justice helps. Margaret sent me a handwritten card that I keep on my desk. Thank you for your courage in standing up to your brother. Because of you, I can move forward with my life. You saved not just your home, but potentially dozens of future victims. The financial recovery has been better than expected. After all assets were liquidated and distributed, I received $34,000, enough to cover all my legal fees, therapy costs, and even add some additional security measures to my home. The mortgage company has cleared all fraudulent applications from my account and added extra security protocols. I've also started volunteering with a fraud prevention organization, sharing my story to help others recognize the warning signs. It's therapeutic in a way, turning this negative experience into something that might help others. The organization's director told me that family fraud is drastically underreported because of shame and the desire to protect family members, even criminal ones. Last week, I received a letter from James through his attorney. I debated whether to read it, ultimately deciding I needed to for closure. In it, he admitted to years of resentment and jealousy, to believing that my success somehow diminished him. He wrote about his gambling addiction, his failed businesses, and how each failure drove him deeper into criminal behavior. He claimed to be getting help and hoped that someday I might forgive him. I haven't responded and don't plan to. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, will be for my benefit, not his. For now, I'm focused on rebuilding my sense of security and trust. I'm dating someone new, Jennifer, who's been incredibly understanding about my need to be cautious with personal information. I've been promoted at work, partly because my attention to detail in catching this fraud impressed my supervisors. The house is fully mine, unencumbered and secure. I've repainted, rearranged furniture, and made it truly my own again. The guest room where James occasionally stayed has been converted into a home gym. I needed to reclaim every space he'd touched. Looking back, the warning signs were always there. The entitlement, the manipulation, the belief that rules didn't apply to him. But recognizing them in a family member is different from seeing them in a stranger. We want to believe the best of our family, to excuse behaviors we'd never tolerate from others. If you're reading this and something feels off about a family member's financial requests or behavior, trust your instincts. Check your credit reports regularly. Secure your important documents. And remember, family doesn't mean you have to accept being victimized. Blood relation is not a license to steal. James will be eligible for parole in 10 years. By then, I'll be 41, probably with a family of my own. I hope he uses his time in prison to genuinely change, to become someone who can contribute to society rather than prey on it. But that's his journey, not mine. My journey is about moving forward, about building a life that's secure and authentic. It's about choosing who I allow into my inner circle and maintaining boundaries even when it's difficult. The house that James tried to steal has become a symbol of resilience, proof that standing up for yourself, even against family, is sometimes the only right choice. To those who've asked if I regret involving law enforcement, my answer is unequivocal. No. James wasn't going to stop. Each successful fraud emboldened him to attempt bigger schemes. If I hadn't caught him when I did, he might have succeeded in stealing my home and moved on to devastate dozens more victims. Sometimes, protecting others means taking a stand, even when the criminal shares your last name. This experience has taught me that integrity isn't about protecting family members from consequences. It's about doing what's right, even when it's painful. James made his choices. I made mine. And I can live with mine. The house stands strong, fully mine, a testament to vigilance and the courage to fight back against those who would take what isn't theirs, even when they're family. Especially when they're family.